I never thought I'd be jealous of a guy holding a camera, but here we are. My brother's engagement party was supposed to be this happy, family-filled evening, right? Instead, I ended up standing awkwardly by the drinks table, watching this photographer, this guy who was supposed to be invisible, move around like he owned the place. And the worst part? After it was all done, he asked me to stay back. Yeah, just me. Okay, let me back up a bit and explain how I got here. So, my brother, Matt, got engaged to this girl he's been dating for like a decade. They're the classic couple everyone expects to get married eventually, and honestly, I'm happy for them. Matt's always been the popular, outgoing type. Big smile, killer jokes, the kind of guy everyone loves at family gatherings. Me? I'm the quiet one, the guy who usually just blends into the background, not that I mind. I've always been more comfortable on the sidelines, watching life unfold rather than starring in it. When Matt asked me to help plan the engagement party, I was all in. I figured it'd be a good chance to hang out, maybe even loosen up a bit. The venue was this cozy little art gallery downtown, white walls, spots of modern paintings, and a bunch of fairy lights strung from the ceiling to keep things warm. Perfect for pictures, which is probably why Matt hired the photographer he did. Enter Alex. The first time I saw him, he was already crouched down, fiddling with his camera lens like it was a puzzle only he could solve. Tall, with messy dark hair that looked like it hadn't met a brush in days, and this pair of glasses that gave him the kind of nerdy charm you don't see every day. He had this easy grin that made you think he wasn't just good at taking pictures but genuinely liked people too. Matt was clearly thrilled with him. Alex was snapping away, catching all those candid moments. The laughter, the clinks of champagne glasses, the goofy faces Matt and his fiancée were making for the camera. I tried to stay out of his way, but there was something about Alex that kept pulling my attention. Maybe it was the way he observed everything so closely, like he wasn't just seeing people but really noticing them. Or maybe it was the way he glanced at me when he thought no one was looking. After the party started to wind down, people were saying their goodbyes, and the noise faded into quiet chatter. Most of the guests left, and I was about to grab my coat when Alex called out to me. "Hey, can you stay for a minute? I want to show you something." I hesitated. I didn't know if he meant to talk to me about the photos or something else entirely. But something in his voice made me nod, and I followed him to a quieter corner away from the remnants of the party. That's when things started to shift. What came next wasn't what I expected at all. We moved over to a little nook near the back wall, where the last few straggler balloons were half deflated, and some empty wine bottles sat in a bin. Alex pulled out his camera and motioned for me to look at the screen. For a second, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to see, but then the images came into focus. Pictures from the party, sure, but not the ones you'd expect. There was a shot of Matt's fiancée, Sarah, laughing with a bunch of their friends, but the way Alex had captured it made her eyes look almost sad. Then there was a photo of my brother standing off to the side, watching everyone but not really part of the celebration. It wasn't the usual happy couple stuff. It was something softer, more complicated. "Most people want the big moments," Alex said quietly, "but I like the small ones. The ones that tell the real story." I looked up at him, surprised by how calm and honest he sounded. There was no awkwardness now, just this quiet connection forming in the space between us. "So, you wanted me to stay because?" I asked, feeling a little self-conscious. He shrugged, tucking a stray lock of hair behind his ear. "Honestly, I wanted to talk. You seemed kind of off during the party, like you didn't want to be there." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, that'd be accurate. I'm not really a party guy. Family stuff, especially when it's about my brother, can get complicated." Alex didn't push, just waited for me to say more. It's weird. Everyone's all smiles and excitement, but I've never been the happy for them type. Not because I don't care, it's just, I don't know. I guess I always felt like the odd one out, you know? Matt's got his perfect life lined up, and I'm here still figuring out what I want. He nodded, like he understood more than I expected. That's a lot to carry around at an engagement party. "Yeah," I admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'm invisible, especially around family. Like I'm just the guy who tags along." Alex smiled, a real, genuine smile that made my chest tighten. "Well, I don't know about invisible, You caught my eye. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden directness. You did? Yeah, he said, voice low enough that I had to lean in to hear. You look different from everyone else. Not just standing there, but like you were somewhere else, thinking about something no one else around you could see. It felt like the room got quieter all of a sudden. I didn't know why I was telling him all this, but somehow it felt right. Do you want to get a drink or something? I mean, now that the party's mostly over? I hesitated. A part of me wanted to say no, to retreat back into my shell. But another part, the part one rarely listened to, said this was a chance to break out of that. Sure, I said. We walked back toward the bar area, where a few half-empty bottles were left behind. Alex grabbed a bottle of water and offered me some. I took it, feeling this strange mix of nerves and curiosity. So, I said, trying to lighten the mood, you've been a photographer for a while? Yeah, about 5 years now, he said. Mostly weddings and engagements. I'm good at blending in, but I like to find the moments that don't always make the highlight reel. That's kind of what I'm like, I said quietly, surprising myself. Not the highlight reel guy. Alex smiled again, and I noticed the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. Maybe that's why we noticed each other. There was a pause, the kind that's full of things not said yet. So Alex said, if you're not the happy for them type, how do you really feel about all this? About your brother getting married? I looked down at my hands, feeling the weight of the question. I guess part of me's happy. I want him to be happy. But part of me is scared. Scared that everything's changing, and I'm going to be left behind. Sounds like you're worried about losing your place, Alex said softly. Yeah, like I'm not sure where I fit in anymore. He nodded thoughtfully. I get that. Change is scary. Then he surprised me by reaching out to gently touch my arm. But sometimes, change makes room for things we didn't even know we wanted. My heart skipped a beat at that. I swallowed hard, feeling suddenly very aware of him, of how close we were standing. Maybe I'm here because you're not just the guy with the camera, I said, voice low. Maybe you see more than people think. He smiled, and it was like the whole night shifted. I see you. That simple sentence hung in the air between us. And just like that, the engagement party felt a million miles away. I didn't know what to say to that at first. You see me? I echoed, half laughing but also kind of hoping he meant it beyond just the photos and fleeting glances. Yeah, Alex said, his voice steady. I mean the real you, not the guy standing off to the side or trying to disappear, the one who's maybe scared but still here, still trying. I swallowed hard, feeling my cheeks warm. It was weird. This wasn't how these moments usually went for me. Usually I'd keep my guard up, throw out a joke, or change the subject. But with Alex, there was something different. Something real. We lingered there for a moment, just looking at each other. The noise of the party was long gone, replaced by the soft hum of the city outside and the faint clink of leftover glasses being stacked in the kitchen. So I said, trying to break the silence but not wanting to move away, what made you want to be a photographer? I mean, you're pretty good at reading people. Alex shrugged, a little shy now. I guess I always liked capturing things that felt honest, the stuff people don't usually notice. When I was a kid, I was kind of invisible too. Camera was a way to connect without using words. That hit close to home. Yeah, me too. Sometimes it feels safer to watch from behind the lens or from the sidelines. He nodded again, a quiet understanding passing between us. You want to see some more photos? I didn't get a chance to show you everything. I nodded and he flipped through his camera's gallery. One picture caught my eye. A shot of me, leaning against a wall, eyes on the floor, looking like I wanted to be anywhere but there. Seeing it captured like that made something in me ache. Why did you take that one? I asked. Because you looked like you were holding something back, Alex said. And I wanted to know why. I shrugged, but the truth was, I didn't have a good answer. It was easier to hide than explain. Just then, a soft knock came from the other side of the gallery door. We both jumped a little. It was Matt, looking around like he forgot something. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting something? He asked, raising an eyebrow when he saw us together. Nah, just checking out some photos, I said, feeling a little awkward under his gaze. Matt smiled, but there was a flicker of something, curiosity or maybe suspicion. Cool. Hey, thanks for helping tonight, man. Before he left, he looked at Alex, then back at me. Hey, maybe you two should grab a coffee sometime. Alex is pretty cool. I almost choked on my own surprise, while Alex just grinned like he knew something I didn't. Once Matt was gone, the room felt quieter again. I realized how much I'd wanted someone to say that, someone to give me permission to step out of the shadows for once. So, I said, breaking the moment, "Coffee, huh?" Alex laughed. I'd like that. We stepped outside the gallery, the night air cool, but not cold. The city lights flickered around us, and for the first time in a while, I felt like maybe there was a different kind of future ahead. We walked toward the nearby cafe, talking about everything and nothing, the weird quirks of the party, the best places to get tacos in the city, how Alex got into photography, and how I was trying to figure out what I wanted in life beyond being Matt's brother. At one point, Alex stopped and looked at me with this intensity that made my heart race. You know, I don't usually do this. Ask someone to stay after a party or to meet up if I haven't known them long. But there's something about you. Something honest. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Maybe I'm just easy to read. Or maybe you just haven't met the right person to notice. We sat down with our coffees, the conversation flowing easier than I expected. It wasn't forced or awkward. It felt like two people finally finding a moment of quiet in a noisy world. I caught myself stealing glances at Alex, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how his hands moved animatedly as he talked about his latest photography project. And when he looked at me, it wasn't with pity or curiosity. It was like he was really seeing me. At some point, the cafe started to close, but neither of us wanted the night to end. We stepped back outside, the streets now mostly empty except for the soft glow of streetlights. Hey, Alex said, hesitating for a second. I know this sounds sudden, but can I see you again? Like, not just as the photographer for your brother's engagement? I laughed a little, heart pounding. Yeah, I'd like that. He smiled. And in that moment, the city seemed a little less lonely, a little more full of possibility. As we parted ways that night, I realized something important. I wasn't invisible anymore, not to Alex. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to be invisible to myself either. Walking home, I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken the first step toward something new, something real. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see where it would go. The next few days passed in this strange sort of blur, the kind where you're caught somewhere between normal life and that little spark of something new. I kept replaying that night, the way Alex looked at me, the way the conversation had flowed so easily. I don't know if I'd ever felt that kind of connection before, where you don't have to explain yourself or put on a mask. We texted the next morning, casually at first, just to check in. Nothing heavy, but enough to keep the thread alive. And then we agreed to meet up again, this time for a proper coffee, without the remnants of an engagement party hanging over us. When I showed up at the cafe, Alex was already there, sipping a latte and looking way too calm for someone who just met the love of his life. Well, at least in my head. I shoved that thought away and greeted him like a normal person, trying not to stare. So, he said, grinning, "How's the world treating you today?" I shrugged, suddenly shy. Honestly, better than it has in a while. We talked about everything, the mundane stuff from our jobs, the weird quirks about family, and the stuff that's hard to say out loud. I told him about my work in IT support, which honestly isn't the most glamorous, but it pays the bills. He told me about the gigs he had lined up, some weddings, some commercial shoots, and a few personal projects he was excited about. The more we talked, the more I realized how easy it was to be around him. Like I could say things I usually kept bottled up. At some point, the conversation drifted to Matt and the engagement again. I admitted to Alex that I was still figuring out how I felt about it all. Happy for Matt, sure, but also a little lost in the changes. Alex reached across the table and gave my hand a light squeeze. Change can be scary, but it's also where growth happens. It sounds cheesy when I say it out loud now, but in that moment, it felt like the most truthful thing I'd heard in years. We wrapped up the coffee date with plans to meet again soon, and as I walked back to my apartment, I felt this hopeful buzz in my chest, a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. Over the next few weeks, things between us unfolded naturally, like a slow dance neither of us wanted to rush. We met for late-night walks, explored new parts of the city, and shared little stories about our lives. Alex showed me some of his favorite photography spots, and I tried to teach him a bit about video games, which he found hilarious. One night, we ended up back at the art gallery where it all started. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the city feels like it's holding its breath. Alex pulled out his camera and asked if I'd be willing to pose for a few shots. I hesitated. Me in front of a camera? But then I thought about how he saw me, really saw me, and I said yes. As he snapped the photos, I realized how different it felt to be the subject instead of the observer. There was a vulnerability there, but also this strange thrill. When he showed me the pictures, I barely recognized myself. There was something honest and raw about them, and for once, I wasn't trying to hide. After we packed up, we walked outside into the cool night air. The city lights glittered around us like stars, and for a moment, everything was perfect. "Thanks," I said quietly, "for seeing me." Alex smiled, that same gentle smile that made my heart skip. "You're worth seeing." We stood there, the silence between us filled with possibilities. Then, without really thinking, I reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he squeezed mine a little tighter. That's when I realized I wanted this. Not just the easy conversations or the late-night walks, but the whole messy, unpredictable thing that comes with letting someone in. Of course, not everything was perfect. Matt and Sarah's wedding planning was in full swing, and sometimes the family stuff got complicated. My parents asked the usual questions about my love life, and I dodged them like a pro, mostly because I wasn't quite ready to share this new chapter with them yet. Alex was patient with all of it. He never pushed me to come out or explain myself. Instead, he just showed up, steady and calm, like a lighthouse when the storm hit. One Saturday afternoon, we found ourselves sitting in a small park, watching dogs chase after frisbees and kids laughing on the swings. Alex pulled out his camera again, but this time he wasn't taking pictures of the scenery. He was focused on me. "Ready?" he asked with a playful grin. I rolled my eyes but smiled. "Always." He snapped a photo just as I laughed at something he said, and when he showed me the shot, it was perfect. Not posed or staged, just me, in a moment of genuine happiness. Looking at that picture, I realized something. Maybe I hadn't been invisible all this time. Maybe I just hadn't been seen by the right person. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over everything, I leaned my head on Alex's shoulder and felt, for the first time in a long time, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And honestly, that was enough. Things kept unfolding in this quiet, steady way that surprised me. I'd never imagined that meeting a photographer at my brother's engagement party would turn into something real. It felt like I was waking up from a long nap, finally noticing the colors I'd been missing. But life, as it always does, threw in some curveballs. A couple of weeks after that afternoon in the park, Matt called me out of the blue. His voice was a little tense, and I could tell something was up before he even said a word. "Hey," he started, "can we talk?" "About everything." My stomach dropped. I wasn't sure what everything meant, but I guessed it had something to do with the wedding. Or maybe Sarah. We met at a quiet coffee shop, the kind with vintage chairs and soft indie music playing low in the background. Matt looked more serious than usual, and I could see the lines around his eyes where stress was settling. "So," he said, hesitating, "Sarah and I, we're having some doubts." I blinked. "Doubts? Yeah, I mean, we love each other, but the wedding stuff is complicated. We keep arguing about details that shouldn't matter. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if we're rushing it." I took a breath, trying to process this. Part of me wanted to say "I told you so," but I held back. Matt needed support, not judgment. "I'm sorry, man," I said finally. "That sounds tough," he nodded. "It is. And to be honest, seeing you with Alex, it's made me think about a lot of things. About being honest with myself." I felt my heart twist a little. Matt, the guy who always had life figured out, was struggling too. "Thanks," he said softly, "for being there. For being you." That night, I told Alex what was going on. He listened, quiet and steady like he always did. "You're doing great," he said after I finished. Sometimes the people we think have it all together are the ones who need someone to see them the most. His words meant more than I could say. For the next few days, Matt and I talked a lot, more honestly than we ever had. I realized that beneath all the engagement hype, he was scared. Scared of making a mistake, scared of losing something he loved. That made me think about my own fears, about stepping into something new with Alex, about opening up to my family, about finally living as myself. One evening, a few nights after the coffee shop talk, Alex came over to my apartment. We'd been spending more time together, but this was the first time he'd seen my personal space, my sanctuary of old books, video game consoles, and a few random photos pinned to the wall. He looked around, a little smile playing on his lips. "This is you. It's a work in progress," I joked, but inside I felt exposed in a good way. We sat down on the couch, and for a while we just talked about dreams, plans, the kind of future we hoped for. It was easy, comfortable, like a warm blanket after a cold day. Then, out of the blue, Alex reached out and took my hand, lacing our fingers together. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. "No matter what happens." I looked at him, really looked, and felt a rush of something I'd buried for years. Hope. "I want to try," I said, voice shaking a little. "I want to see where this goes." He smiled, squeezed my hand, and leaned in, brushing his forehead against mine. That moment felt like the start of everything. But just when I thought things were settling, life interrupted again. One weekend, my parents invited me over for dinner, a rare thing since we'd always danced around certain topics. I was nervous but hopeful, wanting to be honest with them about Alex, about who I was. I'd rehearsed what I'd say 100 times in my head. Sitting at the dinner table, I felt my heart pounding. After some small talk, I finally blurted it out. "There's someone I want you to meet. His name's Alex." There was a pause so long, I thought my ears were ringing. My dad cleared his throat. "Your brother mentioned a photographer, right?" I nodded. "Well, we just want you to be happy," my mom said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "We love you." I blinked, surprised and relieved. That night, I realized maybe the hardest part wasn't telling them. It was believing they'd accept me. With that weight lifted, I felt freer than I had in years. Alex and I kept growing closer, building this quiet, honest love that felt like home. And even though the road ahead wasn't without its bumps, I knew I wasn't alone anymore, because sometimes the right person shows up when you least expect it. The guy with the camera who asked me to stay after my brother's engagement party, and suddenly everything changes. And honestly, I'm glad it did. After that dinner with my parents, something shifted. It wasn't like everything suddenly became perfect or easy. Family stuff never is, but it felt like a door had cracked open, just enough light to peek through. Maybe more than just peek. Alex and I fell into an easy rhythm, the kind that only happens when you find someone who really gets you. We still had our quiet nights in, binge-watching terrible TV shows, or cooking something experimental that usually ended in a minor kitchen disaster. He was patient with my awkwardness, which was saying a lot because I can be painfully self-conscious, especially when it came to showing affection or talking about feelings. One afternoon, a few weeks after coming out to my parents, Alex invited me over to his place. His apartment was a cozy mess of camera gear, art books, and plants that somehow survived, despite my track record as a serial plant killer. He was working on editing photos from a recent shoot, and I plopped down on his worn-out couch, feeling lucky just to be there. "You know," he said, not looking up from his laptop, "I never thought I'd be the guy who gets to be part of someone's before story." I glanced over at him, confused. He continued, "Most wedding photographers only get to capture that one perfect day. But with you, it feels like I'm part of the whole journey. The messy, complicated, beautiful stuff." I smiled, feeling my chest tighten. "I don't know if I'm that interesting." "Trust me, you are." There was something raw and genuine in his voice that made me want to believe it. I realized that with Alex, I didn't have to pretend or shrink myself. I could just be. Around that time, Matt and Sarah finally made a decision to postpone the wedding. It wasn't a drama-filled breakup or anything permanent, just a mutual choice to take a step back and figure things out. It was a relief, honestly. The stress had been brutal, and it gave me space to focus more on figuring out my own life. One evening, after a lazy Sunday brunch with Alex, we decided to take a walk through this little neighborhood park nearby. The air was crisp, the kind of early fall afternoon that makes your cheeks tingle. We found a bench under a big oak tree and sat down, watching kids play in the distance. Alex reached for his camera and snapped a few shots of the leaves turning gold. "Can I take a picture of you?" he asked, his eyes warm. I hesitated but then nodded. "Sure, if you promise not to make me look like a dork." He laughed, and suddenly I felt lighter than I had in months. As he lifted the camera, I caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, a mix of admiration and tenderness that made my heart race. When he lowered the camera and showed me the photo, I saw a version of myself I hadn't met before. A guy who looked nervous, maybe, but also hopeful, open. "See?" Alex said softly. "That's the real you." I looked away, suddenly embarrassed but also strangely proud. We sat there for a while longer, the kind of comfortable silence that doesn't feel empty at all. Then, out of nowhere, Alex turned to me and said, "I want to meet your brother again. Not just as the guy who's dating you, but as someone who's part of your life." My heart skipped. Introducing Alex to Matt felt like a big step, and honestly, I wasn't sure where Matt stood on all this yet. I thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think that's a good idea." A few days later, we arranged to meet at a casual pub near Matt's place. Walking in with Alex by my side, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Matt was already there, waiting with a beer in hand. When he saw Alex, his smile was genuine, and for the first time, it felt like the three of us could actually be in the same room without tension. The conversation flowed easier than I expected. Matt asked Alex about his photography, and Alex asked Matt about work and the wedding postponement. It felt normal, like we were all just people trying to figure things out. At one point, Matt looked at me and said, "I'm happy you found someone who sees you." I glanced at Alex, feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. After the night wrapped up, Alex and I walked home under a sky full of stars. The city was quiet, the kind of peaceful that makes your thoughts feel louder. "I'm glad you're in my life," I said, squeezing his hand. He smiled, leaning his head against mine. "Me too." In that moment, with the cool night air and his steady presence, I realized how far I'd come from the guy who stood alone at his brother's engagement party. The road ahead was still uncertain, sure, but with Alex, I felt ready to face it all. Because sometimes the person who asks you to stay after a party isn't just the photographer. They're the one who helps you see yourself for real. And that, I think, is the best picture anyone could ever take. Months passed, and with each one, things settled into a rhythm that felt right. Matt and Sarah worked through their doubts at their own pace, and I found myself carving out a new place in the story of my family, one that wasn't defined by being just Matt's brother, but by who I was becoming with Alex. We kept building our life together in the small, quiet ways. Sunday morning pancakes that were more burnt than edible. Lazy afternoons wandering the city with Alex's camera slung over his shoulder, and late-night talks that stretched until sunrise. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was what mattered. One chilly evening, as the last leaves clung stubbornly to the trees, Alex and I found ourselves back at that same park where he'd first taken my photo. The world around us was glowing gold and amber in the fading light, the kind of moment that makes you want to freeze time. We sat on the old bench, hands intertwined, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline. "Remember that first night at the engagement party?" I asked quietly. Alex smiled, squeezing my hand. "How could I forget? You standing off to the side, looking like you wanted to be anywhere but there." I laughed softly. "Yeah, that was me. Invisible, scared, all of it. But you stayed," he said, voice tender. "And that's how I found you." I looked at him, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, the doubts, the fears, the steps forward and backward. And I knew, without a doubt, that I was no longer the invisible guy. "I'm glad you did," I said, "because with you, I'm learning what it means to be seen. Really seen." He smiled, leaning in just a little closer. "We don't know what's next," I said, "but I'm ready to find out. Together." Alex nodded, resting his forehead gently against mine. "Together," he agreed. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the soft glow of the setting sun, I realized that sometimes the best kind of love isn't fireworks or grand gestures. It's the steady, patient kind that shows up when you least expect it and stays, no matter what. And for the first time in a long time, I felt exactly where I was supposed to be.